Hi there. I apologize that this video is a day late. Life just sometimes happens. I know that you know how that is. So I am doing the video for week 6 for fall of 2017. And this week I posted in an announcement and asked for people to type in the questions that they had. So I have 6 questions that I'm going to try to go through as quickly as possible. And we're going to do sort of like a speed round for this. So the first one is the difference in pronunciation with R's. So Spanish has two different R spellings. One is with a single R, one is with a double R, and they're two different sounds. So in English, we just have the sound. In Spanish, neither of them is really that similar to that sound. A single R is like a flap. So if you tap your tongue against that ridge that's behind your top front teeth, that's the sound that you're going to make. It's like a soft D. It's ra, ra, ra. So with words like pero, caro, all of those words that just have the single R, that is the sound. Then a double R, or sometimes also an R at the beginning of a word, will be a rolled R sound. It's that R sound. And if you can't make that sound, it's okay. Don't worry too much about it. Just try to find something that's just a close approximation when you're driving in the car or standing in front of the mirror getting ready in the morning, or sometime when you don't have anybody there that'll make fun of you. Practice making that sound, that R sound. So you can try, first of all, just doing 2 of the flaps close together. So do ra, ra, and then try to do it faster. Ra, 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 ra. And see if you can get your tongue trained to make that sound. If not, just find something that's a close approximation. Some people will do sort of a guttural sound instead of a rolled R. And really, as long as you aren't saying pero, it's going to be an improvement, even if you're not quite being able to say perro yet. But just keep working on it. But that is the pronunciation for the Spanish R's. The next question that was posted, it just says sentence structure and speaking fluidly. So I'm going to address these as 2 separate things, but I'm not sure if you meant them as 2 separate things or part of the same question. But I'm actually going to give a similar answer to both. So sentence structure. I can't quickly summarize Spanish sentence structure other than to say it really is not that different from English sentence structure. There are a few differences. One is with the inversion of subject and verb when we're asking a question. In English, we use a helping verb like, are you happy? Like, are you studying, right? We use the helping verb are to ask that question. In Spanish, we would just say, ¿estudias tú? Right? So that inversion of putting the verb first without the use of any helping verb is one of the biggest changes with sentence structure that we have in Spanish. And then other than that, most sentence structure is going to be fairly similar in Spanish and English. So as long as you're keeping things simple, then sentence structure doesn't have to be too terribly overwhelming. There are some exceptions, some complex structures that we use, and in fact, we'll talk about one of those later on with another question. But just work on keeping it simple, like the advice that I give with the compositions. Keep it simple, and don't worry about it being kind of repetitive. That's totally fine right now. And the same thing goes with speaking fluidly. Don't put too much pressure on yourself right now to speak fluidly. And when you do, try to use topics that you're familiar with, the topics that we've been covering so far in class, and work on your fluid speaking just with those simple topics for now. And then you can add other vocabulary, other ideas, other more complex structures later as you start to acquire more vocabulary. But give yourself permission to be a beginner for now, and just to kind of relax with that. And if you are not on track with where you need to be for this class, you'll know because your grades will reflect it, and you can come in and talk to me, and we can kind of identify where your areas of weakness might be. But really, for the most part, people are doing great in the class, and you are able to meet the objectives of this class. So give yourself time and recognize that it takes time to acquire a new language, and that it's a process, and every day your brain is building new connections and you're getting better and better, but it does take time. So the next question was how to type an N-ye, that letter after N in the alphabet, so that N with the tilde over the top. And I apologize, I think that based on this question that I probably have a typo in my document that I have in Blackboard. I believe it's Alt 164 or 0164, and it might in that document say 165. I will check on that. But it's either 164 or 165, I think. So if what you've been doing is giving you a capital letter, try the other one. And you can also, there are other ways. I apologize for not knowing, but I've never used the alt codes when I'm typing in Spanish. I always either switch my keyboard input to Spanish or to an international keyboard, or I use Microsoft Word because there's easy shortcuts in Microsoft Word to be able to type the Spanish characters. So if you'd like to try that instead of the alt codes, you can find instructions for those in that document, in course documents that I have, where I have the instructions for different ways to type Spanish characters. The next question is, why do words have accents and when are accents used? So this actually will be covered, I don't remember in which chapter in our textbook, but there is, in our textbook it does talk about accents and stressed words and how that works and why. But basically there's some rules about pronunciation and about where stress falls in a word in Spanish. If a word ends in a vowel or N or S, you don't have to memorize this. So, but just to give a quick answer to this question, if a word ends in a vowel or N or S, the default stress of that word is on the next to the last syllable. If it ends in any other consonant besides N or S, the default stress is on the last word in the last syllable in the word. In English, there's no rules like that, right? So the stress could be anywhere. But Spanish has these rules. And then we use accent marks if a word doesn't follow the rule. Okay, so for example, café. Okay, because it ends in a vowel, the stress would naturally fall on the next to the last syllable, making it café. Well, that's not the word. The word is café, so we spell it with an accented E at the end to show that that's where the stress falls in that word. So that's the purpose of accent marks. There is one other purpose, and that is to distinguish between two words that would otherwise look the same. Like, for example, sé and sé. There's a sé that means I know, and there's a sé that means to himself or herself. And so the one that means I know, that's a conjugation of a verb, has an accent over it to distinguish it from the other. Also, sí, meaning yes, and sí, meaning if, they're spelled the same, pronounced the same, everything's the same. We use an accent on sí, meaning yes, just to distinguish between those two words, just to show which word we're using. So those are the uses of accent marks. Why does a come before some sentences? And the example given here is, a ella le gusta bailar. So that's a structure that we haven't learned yet. I've given you kind of the pattern for how to use le gusta for the family presentation, but it's a complex, that's one that I referred to earlier as kind of a more complex structure. If you're into the nitty-gritties, if not, you can just plug your ears for a minute. But if you like the nitty-gritties, the reason that it's there is because the verb gustar actually means to be pleasing. So what we're saying is, to her, dancing is pleasing. So that's why the a ella is there, is it because it's actually saying to her, such and such is pleasing. So the a is there for that reason. So because ella is not actually the subject of the sentence. The subject of the sentence is bailar, dancing. So that's one of those sentences where the word order is different. The structure is different from English, which happens sometimes. So that's why it's there. The next question is similar, asking more about a more complex structure. What does the se in se llama mean? What part of speech is it? Okay, so the part of speech there is a pronoun. The se means himself or herself. So when I say me llamo Amy, what I'm actually saying is I call myself Amy. The me is a reflexive pronoun. We will learn about those we'll learn about reflexive verbs and pronouns in the last chapter of this class, so chapter 5. But yeah, so se means himself or herself, and the se llama is actually saying he calls himself or she calls herself such and such, whatever their names are. So anyway, that is all your questions. I'm barely under 10 minutes, so hopefully you guys stuck around for that. If you were one of the people who asked a question and I did not answer it the way you were hoping, if I didn't understand your question correctly, please feel free to send me an email. or set up a time to meet with me or give me a call or whatever, and I will answer your question more appropriately for what you actually were asking. So anyway, hope those are helpful, and I will see you all online.